Welcome to the Faith Forward Leadership Podcast, where we talk with leaders about how they cultivate a higher purpose in their companies today and perpetuate it beyond their tenure. I am on site today at Correct Craft with CEO Bill Yergin. Bill, thanks so much for joining me today.
Beck, it's so good to have you here. It's an honor.
So when I first learned about Correct Craft and your 100-year history of staying on mission, building boats to the glory of God, I was really intrigued, and I think it's a wonderful case study. But before we talk about the company, I love to hear more about your journey. How did you come to be the CEO of Correct Craft?
Beck, it's a long story, but the company had gone through a pretty rough transition from family management to professional management, starting shortly after 2000. And it was a very difficult time for the family, a lot of struggles, the Malone family that owned the company at the time. And by the time I got here, I was the fifth CEO in 5 years. So they had tried to hire me to be the fourth CEO and just didn't feel like that was right timing for me. So I had walked away from that. That CEO lasted about a year and a little over a year. And so they came back to me again. And it was just really, it was really just a God thing. It was some things happened that if I told you, you'd say, that didn't really happen, but they did. That just made it really clear because I was deep rooted in West Palm Beach, where I lived, and deep rooted in our community and our church. And my desire was never to be a CEO. I wanted to be a consultant. I wanted to start a consulting firm. And so I was actually taking steps to do that. And I wanted to build a big consulting firm. I had a lot of contacts. I thought I could do well at it. And then the opportunity came up for the fifth CEO, and still didn't want to do it because it was a big move for my family, but we decided this was a God thing. We were supposed to do it. So it's brought me to Orlando.
Wow. And what intrigued you about the role? What made you want to take that leap of faith?
Well, Correct Craft was a well-known company in our industry and really globally. And the Malone family had built it really well and developed a great brand. So I knew the company, I knew their faith history, but I knew they'd also been going through a lot of challenges. 5 CEOs in 5 years is very difficult, for an organization. And I was just very comfortable, down in West Palm. And but as I said, really just some things happened that were just pure God things that really convinced me that I need to go to Orlando, and that's what we did.
Wonderful. Well, I know the company has changed a lot during your leadership tenure.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how big is the organization today, and what were some of the changes that happened during your tenure?
Oh, wow. I don't know. We got enough time, Becca. But we had, when I got here, as I said, it was a rough time for the company. The company had just moved from its decades-long facility to a new facility that we're sitting in now. And we had just been through a lot of transition. All those CEOs, the guy that had led production for 30 years, shortly before I got here, had a heart attack and died. And so it was a very challenging time. The company with the move was losing money and really arguably on its way to becoming extinct. It was a very difficult time. So we, when I got here, the team really rallied around what we were trying to do. Really, a service trip was a turning point. A service trip we did to Mexico was a turning point for our company. And we all rallied around that and wanted to make a difference. And, we had a lot of changes. In 2009, which was admittedly a bad year, we were a $39 million business. In 2023, we reached our goal of becoming $1 billion business. So we've seen tremendous growth. People ask me all the time, Becca, what is the secret sauce? And I tell them 2 things, strategic planning and culture. And we've got a great strategic planning process that we use that's helped us drive growth. But for purposes of our discussion, really culture has been just so important. People want to be part of something bigger than them.
Absolutely.
And so, we have a really strong culture of building boats to the glory of God, making life better. And we're very intentional about how we implement our culture. And that's had such a huge impact. So we've done a number of acquisitions over the years. And so we've been able to have a pretty significant impact on a lot of people all over the world. We've done acquisitions that have, we've grown our team from 500 to 2,000. We've been able to impact a lot of those employees because, they really are impacted by the culture and what we're able to do for them and with them. And we have a very strong service focus. We just got back yesterday, actually, from a service trip. We had 100 employees in South Carolina.
Wow.
Working at a facility for special needs kids in South Carolina. And so we have a strong culture of service. And when you take that drive to growth, combine it with great strategic planning and a strong culture, you get really great results. And so we've been very fortunate to enjoy great results.
That's wonderful. I'd love to hear a little bit about the culture and the vision and the way you've led the company. What was in place when you came in leadership? And did you have this vision for this growing company with this incredible culture at the outset, or did the Lord reveal that to you over time?
Yeah, great question. When I got here, the company has had a wonderful history and some wonderful things happen. I wrote a book about it called Making Life Better. And we just had a wonderful history. But the 5 years before I got here were very, very challenging because the ownership family was struggling with the transition to professional management, a number of CEOs. And so when I got here, it was a very challenging, difficult time. And nobody thought I was going to be here long. They'd seen what had happened.
Yeah.
Nobody thought, 20 years ago that, I'd still be here. They didn't think I'd be here 20 weeks, much less 20 years. And so, we just really started, trying to tackle that. There's all kinds of things in the business that need to be dealt with, culture and driving our culture. And so, it's just really exciting to me because we've been able to have such a big impact by, focusing on culture. And it's really reverse mission drift in a sense, because you talk a lot about mission drift, in your book and on. The mission here was drifting very quickly. I mean, it wasn't drifting, it was sailing the wrong direction. And we're very fortunate that the team galvanized around restarting that mission, refocusing on that. As I said, maybe we'll have time to talk about it, but there was one service trip that was really the turning point for our company at that time.
Well, you got to share.
Okay. So I was here and, I was working from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. It was just a very challenging time. And one of the things that we needed to focus on was culture. So I was thinking of how we're going to do that and decided to take a group of 25 employees to Tecate, Mexico, and build a house for a homeless family. Everybody, Becca, thought it was a bad idea. It's like, we got all these problems here. You're going to take 25 employees. You can go to Tecate and build a house for a homeless family. Don't we have enough to focus on here? So we went down there, Becca, and it was really challenging. 110. It was July in Mexico. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but it was 110 degrees. We're sleeping on the desert floor. We had tents, but they're so full of sand and all, might as well be sleeping on the desert floor. We were taking showers, Becca, by pouring lake water over our heads, soaping up, and taking lake water and rinsing off. The working condition, we're near the city sewage collection plant. It was not a plan, it was a sewage collection pond. So it was very, very challenging time. And we were there for a few days. We built a house for this family. We went back to San Diego before we flew home. And I had the employees all sitting in a room. And we're sitting in the room. And I asked them, I said, share a little bit about your impression of the trip. And the team said things back like, that was the best few days of my life. They said things like, I've never done anything so impactful. What? They said things like, I can't wait to do this again. And remember, under some really challenging conditions. So I knew then that we were on to something and that we were going to use our platform, for good. So I knew we wanted to use our platform. I couldn't really envision where it was going, but service has become such an important part. Of what we do. As I said, we just got back from a service trip just yesterday. And because we're known as a philanthropic organization, barely a day goes by that somebody doesn't ask me for money. People want contributions, they want money, but we focus our philanthropy on ways that our employees can serve. So we've been all over the world: Cambodia, India, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Central America, the Caribbean, doing service. And people often say to me, why are you taking 100 employees off someplace to do this service work? Why don't you just send them a check? And it probably would be less expensive to us, but it wouldn't have as big of an impact. So our philosophy of philanthropy has been look for ways that our employees can serve. And so we find something that we can go help with. And then it has a huge ripple effect, Becca, because we've seen that not only do we change the lives of the people we go to serve, we're changing the lives of our own folks.
Right.
And then we're changing the lives in that community, because when we go somewhere, the mayor will come out, a news station will come out, and they're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then other businesses in that community will say, hey, we need to be doing stuff like this.
Right.
And then our employees go home to their families, and they sit around that kitchen table and they tell their 10-year-old and 12-year-old kid or grandson or granddaughter what they did, and they're inspiring those kids to want to do something. So it may not be the most economically efficient, but we're very, very intentional about how we do, our philanthropy and service. So we've been, as I said, all over the world. We do all these both locally. We've done dozens, maybe hundreds of between the local projects and the, global projects. And it has just a huge, huge impact on people we're serving and also our team.
That's wonderful. I love that intentionality about caring for the team and that ripple effect, the team members' lives across the team, but into their families and the communities where you're serving. I love that.
Yeah.
So Correct Craft has had a really rich 100-year history. I'd love to hear from you. What have been some of the God stories that you've seen or heard about through your tenure, or even before you came to be the leader?
There's so many of them, Becca, and I'm not promoting the book because we give a lot of them away, but the Making Life Better book that I wrote about Correct Craft's history, tells a lot of these stories. But couple of the big ones, one is World War II. And in January of 1945, the world was in a very, very challenging place. And, tens of millions of people have been killed. Hundreds of millions have been displaced from their homes. And it was just maybe the most challenging moment in world history was at that point. And but Adolf Hitler had made a tactical mistake at the Battle of the Bulge, and the Allied forces were now marching across Europe towards Berlin. But there was a barrier, the Rhine River. So Supreme Commander Eisenhower cabled back to the Pentagon, said, I need boats. I need a lot of boats. So the Pentagon reached out to Correct Craft and said, we need 400 boats in 23 days or so. Wow. The company at the time was building about 20 boats, a month. So it was significant scaling. And many of the men that worked in the facility actually were overseas serving. So they didn't have their full, staff. But the company said, we'll do it. We'll make it happen. So at the time, obviously World War II, they took the roads, they closed the roads around the plant. They built a railroad track right to the plant so that when the boats were built, they could take them right off. And they started working on the project. Well, shortly into the project, the Pentagon realized that the Correct Craft team was not going to work on Sunday. Very upset. The Pentagon's like, we need these boats. You got to work 7 days a week. And the company said, no, we're not. We'll give our employees off Sunday. We give them time to relax, spend time with their families, recreate, worship if they choose. We give them Sundays. And the Pentagon was very upset. The family that owned the company stood firm and said, we're not going to work Sundays. So the Pentagon said, okay, we better get the boats done. They worked till midnight, Becca, on Saturday night. They come back in at midnight on Monday morning, take that 24 hours off. And they were working pretty much around the clock to get done. So they got the boat allotment they were given done actually early. And some other boat companies that were given allotments didn't get theirs done. So they only built theirs, but they built about an extra 100 boats for other boat companies that were working Sundays. Wow. So that's a story that's one. Another one was about 10 years later at the end of the 50s, the company was doing another government project, and a government auditor came to town and wanted a bribe. And the company wouldn't pay him a bribe. And so the auditor started failing the boats, and perfectly good boats. The auditor failing, put the company into bankruptcy. Wow. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was just principle. I'm not going to pay a bribe. So put the company into bankruptcy. and the company's vendors got about 10 cents on the dollar. And the way bankruptcy worked, so that was it. And they couldn't come back and try to get more money. They were discharged. The debt was discharged. The company was able to reorganize, open back up. And the family spent 20 years, Becca, 20 years worth of profits that went back into paying back all those people that had lost money during the bankruptcy. And I've never heard of anything like that happen before, ever. And because they were legally discharged, they didn't have to pay anybody a penny. It's 20 years later, somebody knocking on the door, and you come to your house, knock on the door, and they say, "Hey, Becca, we know that your grandfather 20 years ago owned a woodworking plant or facility down in Orlando, and we know he died 10 years ago, so he's not even alive. But here's $5,000 we owed him. This is for your family." And so there's a lot of stories like that I talk about in the book, about how, the company, was really tried to honor God, really tried to do the right things. And they were blessed. The company was usually blessed. And, the years and grew. And we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. And, that just doesn't happen. That's pretty rare. 90% of businesses don't make it past 10 years. And, here we are 100 years later. However, there were some challenges, as I've talked about, a couple times earlier in the interview. But, and then when after I came here, the turnaround, had, just God's fingerprints all over it. In that, he was able to, bless us and bless our work, which I'm very thankful for. And, we've been able to use the platform for good. And that's really, really important to me, is that we take the resources we have and not only provide a fair return to our owner, which that's our job, but also be able to use our platform for good. And we've tried to do that on all kinds of, with our industry in Washington, D.C., with the work that we've done all over the world. So, we're happy to be able to do that and very excited about that. So it's definitely a God thing.
That's wonderful. I love seeing how God's providing and how he's been working these 100 years, and also being intentional to steward the platform that the Lord has given you, and the success and the growth that God has given you too. I think that's wonderful.
Yes.
So, Bill, I know learning is really important to you. I think so often great leaders are great learners. So I'd love to hear, what have been some of the best learning moments for you over your leadership tenure?
Yeah, it's such a great question, because we have a learning organization, and we have Craft University. We have a lady, Bree, who focuses on developing learning and culture in our organization. And we've had many, many, many people that have gone back and gotten degrees and gotten certifications. And, I tell people at our company all the time, I said, if you're at a Correct Craft, if you're a Correct Craft employee and you're not learning, it's because you've chosen not to learn. We want to make it so easy. And we'll support pretty much anything you want to do, if you want to go about learning. So we focused very heavily on that. We've had probably close to 40 employees who have gone back and got their MBAs that we supported to go back and do that. Many that have gotten their undergraduate degrees, certifications. And so, to me, it's just so essential to, being productive in life, having a flourishing life, being effective, so many different things, learning. But I tell people often, it's not about, we use a phrase called be a learner. And so I tell people, it's not about consuming information. It's about how you process the information you're consuming. For instance, we talk about being a learner. Most people, and I hope it doesn't come across as judgmental. I don't mean it that way. It's just an observation that most people are knowers. And what that means is they consume information to validate what they already believe.
Interesting.
Okay, we want to be learners. We want to be learners. Learners consume information to grow and have their mind changed and to think differently and bigger and better. I don't want to read things that just validate what I think. But it's interesting, because knowers can take information that doesn't validate what they think and go through the mental gymnastics of making it validate what they think. So if you have this mindset of you're trying to take in information to prove yourself right, that's not being a learner, no matter how much information you consume. And it takes a lot of energy to be a knower because you got to, make everything work. You feel like you got to be right. You're trying to prove yourself right. It just takes a lot of energy. So we talk all the time about being a learner, and we want to learn. We want to grow. We want to see things a new way, differently. Learners love having their mind changed. And in fact, it's a little bit of an endorphin rush to have your mind changed because you're like, wow, how did I not? I mean, even, I've had a 40-year career. And even at this point, I have my mind changed or see things a new way all the time. I think, how did I get this far? Well, knowing that, but it's a great feeling. It's not, it's not a threatening feeling, or you don't feel like, you love that. And so that's what we try to, promote throughout our company. And we are definitely a learning organization. We are constantly doing reading books together, taking classes together, talking about sharing what we're learning between ourselves. And we have a list of about 25 correct craft recommended books that are business books that we recommend our team read and consume. So we want to consume information, but it doesn't do any good. And this is a game changer. This is a life changer if you can get this point. We want to consume information, but it doesn't do any good to just try to make it fit in your existing mindset. If you take in information and you want to learn and have your mind changed, it's a real game changer. Sometimes I'll put up, when I'm talking about this, I'll put up a big white screen with a little black dot on it. And I'll say, whoever the smartest person in the room is, what they know is in that little black dot. And all the big white of the screen, that's what there is to know. But we can get captured by our own experiences and what we know and think, well, that's it. I know everything. I know what I need to know. And none of us do. So we want to be a learning organization.
I love that. And I think that's so important because to remain relevant as a company, you really need to be able to embrace change and innovation, which I know is a big part of the success of Correct Craft. And not all changes drift, and we say that often. We want to avoid mission drift, but not all changes drift, but we need to discern the difference. I love hearing that the learning kind of bend of the organization really parallels the innovative success that you guys have had in the boating industry.
Yeah. So learning and growing change is not drift, right?
Right.
We have our values. We want to build boats to the glory of God. We want to focus on making life better. We've got our values. We capture what we call our identity or cultural pyramid. They capture the values. And we're not, we've got our core values that are steady. It's our North Star, right? But the vast majority of what we do, we can be better at and we can learn to be. And we want to be innovative. And I tell our team all the time, if we're not innovating, we're not improving, we're not long for this world as an organization because somebody else is out there doing it. And so we stay very focused on innovation. We focus on separating what we call, this name is not unique to us, but sustaining and disruptive innovation. And we have a separate entity, Watershed Innovation, that focuses on more of the disruptive innovation, while our other entities focus on sustaining innovation. So we try to be all these things. We try to be very intentional about how we're doing it, not just letting it happen. So, and as I said earlier, it's a game changer. If you can really get your head around, have enough self-awareness to realize I know really very little. And so I've read hundreds of books, but I still feel like I know nothing, and, if you can get your head around that I know very little, and really just be obsessive or have an insatiable desire to learn and grow, that's a huge, huge impact on an individual. And when you get a bunch of people doing that, it has a huge impact on the organization.
Love that. Well, as you look back on your 40-year leadership journey, what have been some things, maybe missteps or key learnings or things you would do differently as you look back on those decades?
So I can tell you what my biggest consistent mistake has been. That is overvaluing competency in hiring. And we talk about, this isn't unique to us, but we talk about looking to hire people who have character, competency, and chemistry. And so what happened, what my biggest mistake has been, and I'm hoping to get through the rest of my career without doing this again, but my biggest mistake has been having a problem, finding someone who's highly competent to fix that problem and not paying enough attention to character and chemistry. And then ending up with somebody on our team that eventually have to ask to leave the team or they leave because they don't fit. So I would never, Becca, intentionally hire somebody who had bad character or bad chemistry, but I can get hijacked by somebody who's highly competent and think I can work the rest out with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I, as I said, if I thought they had bad character, I'm not going to hire them. If I thought they're not a fit, I'm not going to hire them. But I can get like so hijacked by the competency piece that I don't pay enough attention to that. Now, I'm very aware of this now, so I try not to do that. But I've done it a bunch of times. So.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We can learn from your experience on that.
That's a big one. You know, I've hired some people that were incredibly talented that I ended up having to let go because, they lack the character chemistry that we need, to be effective in our organization and culture.
Do you have other advice on the hiring and even the speed at which you let go of people, or how you go about doing that to make sure you have the right folks on the team in terms of the competency and the character?
So I'll start off I'll take that up a little bit to a little bigger perspective in that one of the keys to our success is we focus on who, not how. And so, to me, I feel like not often, almost all the time, I'm the least talented person on our team. And I need to have great people, around me if we're going to be successful. So I'm very focused not on how we're going to solve problems or how we're going to do things, but who's going to do it. And if you look for the right who, and the right who is somebody that's highly competent with high character and high chemistry, you can accomplish almost anything. And so I see my role as CEO, my job is to provide clarity. I'm going to provide clarity on what our mission, what our why is, what our values are, what our strategic plan is, what our annual budget or annual plans are. And if I provide clarity on that and I get the right who's, Becca, it all gets done. It's, because you've got people that have clarity on what they're supposed to do. They're highly competent and they've got the character and chemistry to get it done. And then you can grow, as an organization. So, that's why we look for all three of those. We're doing the hiring. You talked about the firing a guy that's actually a Nautique fan, Henry Cloud. I don't know if you've heard of Henry, but he wrote a book on Necessary Endings. And he talked about how often that we as leaders have a hard time, and I do, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I have a hard time, making changes or having what we call necessary end based on Cloud's book. But you have to be willing to do that. And sometimes I've actually had people question me and say, I've had spouses call me. And in both cases, it happened twice. Both cases, it was a wife that called me and said, how can you have the values you say you have? You've fired my husband. And neither of these were cases where I personally fired them, but they'd been in the organization, they got fired. And it's really hard because I won't let them down, and I won't, I should say, defend ourselves. I just say, I'm so sorry we've let you down. I hope we have a chance to, re-earn, your trust or respect. I can't tell the spouse that her husband, was late every day for work or didn't show up on Fridays or wasn't following the safety protocol and had 17 warnings. And, I can't go there and I don't want to go there. But, we have people that don't have character, competency, and chemistry. We have to sometimes make changes and it's super hard. But my job as CEO is not just to make sure we're successful this year, but Becca, to make sure that if you work here and you want to know that you're going to have a job 20 years from now, that you've got a job 20 years from now. And sometimes that long-term sustainability for the benefit of the organization and the team, you have to make those changes. It's super hard. It's super hard. But I got to tell you, this is another interesting part of this. I can't tell you, Becca, how many times I've had somebody I've run into a year or two later, and not only was it good for us, it it was the best thing that happened to them
Mm-hmm.
because they were in a situation where they weren't, it wasn't ideal for them either.
Right.
And so, people have come up to me and say, wow, that was really tough, but I just want you to know that it was a wake up call. I realized, I needed to deal with some issue. I've got a new job. It's going well. And, and often we'll hug and that's, have a great, that's happened to me many times.
Yeah. So it's good long term for the company, but it's better long term for them as well.
Almost always. In fact, I'd like to say always. I don't know if it's every single time, because if they're not fitting in and they're not happy at the job, often their performance issues because it's just not the right fit for them, and they're not performing well, and so often it's really good for them too.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know in the past we've talked a lot about, you mentioned intentionality a lot in our conversation today, and even the intentionality in developing a team, but also developing the leaders on your team and developing a strong leadership bench.
Yeah.
Knowing that as a leader, you're not going to be around forever.
No.
So who is going to come in? Who's going to be the next CEO? And how can we train a number of candidates for that role? And so right now, this is a very interesting moment in time for your tenure, for Correct Craft's history as well, because you're in this season of transition. You let the board know you plan to transition out. I love to hear, how is this going for you, for the team, and even how is you feeling in the midst of this? You've prepared for this moment for a number of years. How is it feeling as the plan unfolds?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me that. They've asked me why a relatively young, healthy, high energy CEO who I think is having an impact, would step down. And it's interesting because I told our board, I sit on the board as a board member, but also as CEO. I told our board I'd give them over a year's notice. And that equally important, I would make sure there was a strong bench because Becca is really important to me that we have an internal successor. So as we're recording this, we haven't announced who that's going to be. By the time this is out, we will have announced, but it's just incredibly important, that we have an internal successor for a whole bunch of reasons. I think it's better on the organization. It's more chance of not having mission drift and a number of other reasons. So I was very intentional, again, that word, about how I planned to step down. And so for a few years now, I've been organizing our company in a way that gave potential successors more responsibility. It's been a little difficult for me. I don't want to, say poor me. It's been a little difficult for me because I want to be engaged.
Sure.
But I've been trying to delegate more authority and more responsibility to potential successors and make sure that, they have the experience they need. So we have an intro. I've sent them to some executive education at some prestigious schools. So they can expand their thinking and get some outside input and how they think. And it's going well.
So all this planning and intentional planning for leadership transition, how are you feeling as the plan unfolds? You mentioned it's kind of hard to give up some of the authority and to delegate. How is it going these last few months?
Great question, Becca. I love my job. I love our company. I love our team. So it's been exciting in some ways and very challenging in other ways. Just emotionally, I hate to step down. I mean, Craft's a wonderful platform to do a lot of good. It's given me so many opportunities, in our industry in Washington, D.C. I've been invited to the White House 9 times, by 3 different presidents. So, it's just given me a lot of opportunities. But I also know that, or I believe that this is a good time for the company to transition, just in terms of where we are in the business cycle, where we are in terms of having our team ready and having successors ready. So, I mean, I could do this for another 10 years easy and love it. But I also think it's probably the right time. And I don't want to be the last to know, when it's time to step down. When's old Bill, going to get out of here?
Right.
Yeah. And, I have a great relationship with our owner. I've got, I'm on the board and I'm a great relationship with the board. I feel like they probably let me work as long as I wanted to. So, but I want to I also want to do what's right for the organization. I'm going to step into the chairman role when I step down as CEO. So I'll be working with my successor, and not on a day-to-day basis, but just trying to, work with them to make sure that, we continue our success. And so it's overall, it's going well. It's the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you sense it was the right time. I'd love to hear, what do you feel like the Lord's been teaching you in this particular season of your leadership?
To really just, be effective in whatever you're doing and have an impact, whatever you're doing. And to me, it's been another opportunity to invest in people. I mean, that if I'm known for anything when I retire, I hope it's that, I've really tried to have an impact on people and invest in people. We've invested so heavily in our team for the last 20 years. And, we've, as I said earlier, degrees, certifications, all kinds of classes, really invest in people. And we've invested in people through the service trips, people we've impacted, our own team. We have our team. We have people's lives change going and serving. And so if I'm known for anything at the end of the day, when, somebody's looking back, if anybody ever does, it says, what do we think about that Bill guy? I hope it's, that he was really committed to doing his best to help people however he could.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that intentionality around that legacy. Now, the company is about 100 years old now. And
It is under. Exactly. This year. Yeah.
This year, 100 years old, and it's had this.
So this is funny. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I speak a lot.
Yeah.
I do a lot of speaking, and I tell people the Correct Craft story. Did all kinds of conventions, groups, all over the world. I've done this. And it's interesting how often somebody will come up to me. About every second or third time I'll do it, somebody will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, what a great story. Were you the founder?"
Not the founder.
No, not the founder.
Not the founder.
No, that would make me, I'd be pretty old.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. Well, with this 100-year rich history, what do you hope is the legacy in the future 100 years? What do you hope that is? Or
I hope we can continue to honor God, and we can continue to make life better on everybody we come in contact with. And right now we work hard. If you come in contact with Correct Craft, we want your life to be better because of that. And we've done that, even oddly enough, even with competitors. We've offered like culture camps or innovation summits or things to the industry. We've had competitors come, and I've actually had people ask me, that's their competitor. What's up with that? But you know what? That's okay, because if they take some of the things that we're doing and take them back to their workforce or their team, and they can impact people's lives for better, we're okay with that. Now, we're still going to try to, beat them in the marketplace. But, we can help their team and their organization, and then their organization can do things, to try to make life better on their communities. That's fine. We're okay with that.
That's wonderful. It's a beautiful ripple effect, even to competitors.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of different topics. Is there anything you wanted to share that we didn't yet cover?
I had, in the last couple of years, I've spoken at a couple of university graduations, and both of them had like 10,000 people in the crowd. I thought to myself, what was I going to share? And the first graduation was at University of Central Florida, and I talked about the concept of being a learner, which we've touched on already. The second graduation was at Nova Southeastern University down in South Florida, and there I talked about the idea of chasing impact, not reward. And this is such a powerful concept, because I was talking to a group of graduating MBAs and law students. There were like 800 graduates and 10,000 of their friends and family. And, they were all, a lot, and I wouldn't say all, but many of them had gone to school because they wanted to have a great career and they wanted to make a lot of money. And I told them, don't chase rewards, chase impact. And I talked about the idea of when you chase rewards, you get on the hedonic treadmill. And that hedonic treadmill, you're just, you're running in place, and you get a taste of a reward, Becca, but, it's really tastes good, but it's not satisfying. So what happens is you get back on that treadmill to get more. But you don't realize that treadmill's slowly speeding up. And you end up at the end of your career worn out, tired, broken relationships, and unsatisfied. So But if you chase impact, you're trying to make the life better everybody you come in contact with. And that's whether it's your team, your company, your community. And you get so much more satisfaction in your career by chasing impact. But this is the interesting part. You can chase impact and still get the rewards because organizations want impact focused people on their team. So they work hard to recruit them and retain them and reward them. Because you chasing rewards isn't the only way to get rewards. No, if you're chasing impact because you think that's going to get you rewards, that's so that's one thing. The other thing is, so chase impact. Chase impact. You're not sacrificing anything, and you're giving yourself such a better life and career, by chasing impact. So that's one thing. The second thing is having a strong culture in your organization significantly drives results all across the organization. And I had last summer, I spent a week at the London School of Economics in England, and I was taking a course there called Passion and Profit. And it wasn't a faith-based course, but they were talking about this idea of using your platform for good and so forth. And it was so interesting to me because their research indicates that companies that have strong cultures are more profitable. But get this, unless you develop the culture to get the profit. So you got to think about that for a second. But if you think, I want to be profitable, so I'm going to put a strong culture in because that's going to make me more profitable, that often backfires.
Right.
Because people can see through the manipulation and the hypocrisy. But if you put a strong culture in because it's the right thing to do, you get the financial benefits and it impacts the success of your company just because companies with strong cultures do so much better if it's legitimate, so it is authentic. So those are just a couple of things that jumped to my mind. I could literally sit here and talk about this all day long. So,
and I would love that.
So those are a couple of things that jumped to mind.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing from your career and the rich history of Correct Craft. I really have a deep respect for this company, and we often talk about what it takes to avoid mission drift is what we call uncommon intentionality. Any leader who's made it to the top of their organization is intentional in some ways, but it really takes this next level uncommon intentionality to keep and preserve a higher purpose in a business context and preserve that for decades and decades. So I loved hearing a little bit into how that came to be.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this was helpful in your leadership journey. On behalf of On Mission Advisors, if there's anything we can do for you to help you better define, protect, and champion what matters most in your company, please reach out and contact us. We'd be happy to help you as well. Until next time.